So we're up to Daf Mem Gimel Amid Beis. We just did a Mishnah. Let's review that. If a girl got married two times in Erison, she got married and divorced in Erison, married and widowed in Erison. Then the Kesuba, both Kesubas go to her father, because as long as she is not married, as long as there's no Nisuin, as long as the marriage is not after 12 months consummated, right? She remains in her father's rishus. Conversely, if she would go ahead and get married and have Nisuin, and then get divorced from that, and then widowed from the Nisuin a second time, then everything would go to the father, to her. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Yehuda says since the first marriage was the Kesuvos was B'shas Erison, and she was in the father's rishus, he would collect the first Kesuba. That's the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. So Gemara is going to ask a very, very interesting shaila. What's the halacha regarding collection? Now, one of the biggest sugyas in Shas that is very, very comes up all the time is the concept of mishubadim. The shorish mishubadim is ayin veis dalid, which is to serve. The land serves you. How does land serve you? It secures your loan. A person wants a loan. He goes to an individual to borrow money. So just as Bisman Azeh, what secures the loan? Where's your collateral? So usually karka is the lateral. By us, the mortgage, the bank owns our house, right, until we pay it off. And over there, if any land that was there at the time of the loan, that land would be mishubed. There'd be a lien on that land to pay. So here's the question at hand. You just told me, like Rabbi Yehuda, that you go after ksiva, correct? Now, let's say she wants to collect her ksuba. You know, she gets divorced, whatever, and again, there's a lien on the property to pay off the ksuba. Do we go after the shas ksiva, and therefore any lands that were sold after the ksuba would be subject to her collection? Or do we go after, no, the shas gevia at the time of the collection, and therefore any field sold beforehand is free and there is no lien on that field? That's the Gemara's question at hand. So let's see it. Let's see it inside. Okay. Says the Gemara. We're up to a Mem Gimel Amid Beis. Mem Gimel Amid Beis. How many lines from the bottom? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. 16 lines from the bottom. Umigva me'emas gavia. When does she collect? When does she collect her property? In other words, the property that's there to ensure her ksuba, does she collect from the time of the writing or from the time of the marriage, the nisuin itself? Right? So Amar Rav Huna, Mona Masayim, the Ika Ksuba, the 100 or the 200, whether she's an almana that receives 100 or a basula that receives 200, Mina Erison, they would go collect Mishas Erison. In other words, from the time of the marriage, even before the nisuin, but you would collect any properties that were sold, there'd be a lien on those properties. In other words, a very big chumrah for the people buying the lukuchais, but a very big kula for the woman. The toisefes, and any addition that was added to ksuba, minan nisuin. After all, the toisefes nisuin guys, if you write a ksuba, you're only writing 100 or 200. Anything that's extra is going to be added at the time of the nisuin. So, according to this, Rav Huna is saying that b'shas ksiva or b'shas the erison, that would be the ikaksuba. Any toisefes, any addition that was added at the time of the nisuin, that would only be collectible at the time of the nisuin. So there would not be a lien on anything from, let's say she got married, the erison was in April and the marriage was in September. So anything that was in April to September would secure the 100 or 200. But any toisefes, let's say he added another few $100, that would be what only starting September, any land sold after September. Good. Rav Asi says, you don't have to go after ksiva, you go after shas nisuin. You go after when they get married, when they're living together, not shas erison. So therefore, in our example, any land that was sold from April to September would not be subject to a lien. It would not be subject to the lien. So machlokes, Rav Huna saying the Ikka Ksuba goes from Shas Erison and the Tosefes later on, And Rav Asi saying no, everything, the Ikar Ksuba and Tosefes go B'Shas Nesuin, in our example, from September. Says the Gemara Vayt. Umi Amar Rav Huna Hachi, does Rav Huna really say so? Umi Amar Rav Huna Hachi, does Rav Huna really say so that what? That you go after Shas Nesuin, that you go after Shas, like you make this chilik between the Ikar Ksuba and the Tosefes Ksuba. For Itmar, Haitzia love Shtei Ksubas. The man wrote a 2 ksubas, one for 200, and one for 300. She has 2 ksubas. One that will pay at 200 and one that will pay at 300. V'amar Rav Huna, what does Rav Huna say? Basa ligvais masayim. If you're coming to collect, you collect. Goyvim is man rishain. You collect from the earlier date. Shalish meyosh. Goyvim is man sheni. You go what from the second date, whatever that whatever you'll be able to collect Mushubadim, whatever the Kesubah is dated. So if you and the guys, he can't collect both Kesubas, you only get one. So if he's using the earlier one, you collect from that date. If you go from the later one, you collect from that date. And if yes, you're saying to yourself, why would the world she collect with the 200 when she get a 300, right? And the answer is because all the land that was Meshubah to pay the 200, the 300 was a later date, guys, right? In other words, you could have secured a lien on much more property, with all the property sown between the time of the 200 and the time of the 300. So that would be a difference. Now, what's the kasha? Vim Isa, and if it's true that the Ikar Ksuba goes after Ksiva and the Tosefes goes after what? Goes after Shas Nesuin. Now, if you have a Ksuba of 300 guys, that's a Tosefes Ksuba. You have an additional 100. It's only 200, correct? You have an additional Tosefes is 100. So now, V'misa Tigba Masayim is man Rishain. If it's true, but you say that the Erison, B'Shas Erison goes to the Ikar Ksuba, collected 200 B'Shas Rishain, Umeya, and the latter Mizman Sheni, and collect the 100 from the second time. What did you just tell me, guys? Watch, look at me. The 200 ksuba you collect this date, the 300 you collect this date. Now, you're not getting more pashtas than 300. That's the max you can get. Of course, you're either using this or this. So now, Rav Huna said either this one, or this one. But you, Rav Huna, said a chiddush. You said that this 2 exists, and now you have a 3. But from the 3, 1 is a Tosefes. So why do you have an option of 2 and 3? The option should be 2 and 1, because the Tosefes goes at the time of the Nesuin, right? So we're asking Rav Huna, how can you, Rav Huna, make a distinction between a regular Ksuba and a Tosefes Ksuba? We see over here, there's a Tosefes Ksuba, and the whole kit and caboodle is going after it together. You're not dividing 2 and 1, you're going 2 and 3. That's the kasha. So doing what good Jews do, we always ask a question with a question, right? According to your reasoning, Tigba Chamesh Meos Kula Messiah is man Rishain, plus Meos man Sheni. Why did you just tell me? You told me that there's a collectible in this ksuba, correct? In other words, guys, there's 2 ways to learn. The way we learned, why it's really not a kasha, is Nemanu Shach. You can collect this one or this one. What are you doing? You're asking me, Rav Huna, you're saying you can collect both, 200 from this one and 100 from this one. So if you're saying that both are viable, you're saying they're both viable shtaros, why are you limiting it to 1? Collect all the 500, right? You're telling me they're both viable. So collect 500. According to your reasoning that this ksuba of 3 has a tosefes to the additional 2 of the first one, right? So therefore, why limit it to 1? You should extend it all the way to 500. As I read the Gemara. Ella, what do you have to say? Chamesh meyash my time legavya. Why don't you collect chamesh meyash 500? Even like Kosovla, since you didn't write, Savisi, I so willed, and I added on plus meya amasayim. I added on 300, 100 on 200. Hachi kamala. Im is man rishan gvias gavya masayim. Im is man sheni gvias gavya plus. In other words, I never said that this ksuba was a taisefes on this ksuba. They were two totally different ksubas. So what are you asking me? You're saying to me the following. If a person, I said, Rav Huna, you want to know what the din is? If you have what? If you have what you collect, I'll tell you what you collect. You collect the ikka ksuba on the day that it's written from the Erisin, and you collect the Sefes from the day of your marriage. That's what I say. You're asking me, if that's the case, the 200, 300, you should get 200 here and 100 here. If that's the case, you should get 300 here and 200 here. Ella, what? I didn't say that there's 200 and this one is an addition to this. I wrote two shtaros. You know what I said? If you want the two, you get the two. And you'll get all the fields that, a lien on all the fields sold between the date of the two and the date of the three. If you collect the three, you may get more money, but you won't have a shibud on all the nechasim that was sold between these dates. So one has nothing to do with the other. So Rav Huna is beautifully answering up. Your question on me is not a question, because it's not pshat, there's a ksuba and a tosefes. There's two separate ksubas. It's not like you learned there's a 2 and a 3 and the 3 is a 1 to this. No, there's 2 and there's a 3 and they have nothing to do with each other. So therefore, you want to collect the 2, collect the 2. Advantage, all the fields that's sold in between. You want to collect the 3, advantage, it's more money. Disadvantage, you don't get all the liens. That's what he answered him. So Hachanami, here as well, in my case, here as well, right, in my case, we are collecting 200, and I say you collect 200 and 100. Hainu time because you didn't go ahead and say right? You can't have both. You can't. So what are you saying? If I get more money, I'll be Michael the original shibud. So that's why I don't collect 100, because I'm Michael that 100 for the original shibud. If I take the 300, I'm Michael the original. Look at Rashi. Hachanami. Midoloi Kosav, when he didn't write that the second star, I'm adding on 100 to the first 200. He wrote a second document, a second date for all that. And not a lashon to an addition of the original star. She's Michael, the what? The original shibud on the first one, meaning all the land that was sold in that time. Then boss ligvay shtar sheni tigma mizman sheni. Good. Avagabi tosefes hamoisef ed. Then you moisef on. Then you would collect. Okay, this guy's outside. We had a shaila. At which point in time does she collect from? Said Rav Huna, the ikka ksuba goes from the time of the erisin, from the time of Kesuvos when it's written, and the tosefes from the time of the suin. Says Ravasi, both the time of the suin. Asks Ravasi, from the case of 200 and 300, why are you collecting this one separately and this one separately? Why isn't it one star? And he said, because he was mavatal the star. He said the following. He didn't say, I'm adding on to the additional 200. He wrote a separate star. You want to collect the 200? Go after that. And then what? You'll have the advantage of everything sold in between. You want the 300, you'll have the advantage of that. Not a cash. I hope that was okay. Little talking a lot. Amamar going after back over the Baisa. E-boy behai gavya, e-boy behai gavya. You got a 200, 300, collect whichever one you want. Lema pligi, let us say the Rav Nachman. Let's say Rav Nachman, the great Rav Nachman, argues in Rav Huna. Dom Rav Nachman, shtei shtaros hayotze b'zeh achazeh. You have two shtaros that go out, one after the other. Bittul sheni es rishon. So let's say you have one star that I'm selling you the field. The second star I'm giving you is matana. The second star is mevatel the first star, right? So what do you see? That you can't use the first star. Why did Rav Huna say Ratza Mizegova, Ratza Mizegova? I mean, they're both viable staros. Use whichever one you want. And we don't say when you wrote a ksuba for 300, it's mevatel 200. Says Rav Nachman, the Indian mecher, you sell the guy a field and then you give them as a matana. It becomes a matana and it's not a mecher anymore. So you see, obviously, it must be Rav Nachman, argues and Rav Huna. It must be Rav Nachman, argues and Rav Huna. Says Merlavni Yitmar Allah Amra Papa Umoida Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman is Moida. The Oisif Bei Dikla. If you add a dekel, you're adding what? You're adding palm tree. So in other words, in the first shtar, the mecher says, I'm selling you X amount of land. And the second one, it says, I'm giving you a matana, the same land plus a dekel, right? The Tosefes kasvei, he wrote it what? For the second one, meaning it's not mevatel. In other words, the Papa says, Rav Nachman would be maida, that if you moisif in the second one, he wrote it for the addition kasvei and not even mevatel the first one. So Hanami, ha'oisif la nidi. Hanami, he's what? He's being moisif, right? He's being moisif to 300. So in other words, Rav Nachman could agree with what? With Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman could agree with Rav Huna, excuse me. He could agree with Rav Huna. Says Rashi, the moisif ba dikla, b'shtar basra, in the latter shtar, l'toisefes kaspe, v'loy liv tule, and not for the purpose of being mevatel it, l'kama. Ella di mazmin shnei deli mizman sheni asi lemigvi liknei ikar b'toisefes. If you want to collect for the second time, you be kind of the main land on toisefes. V'nichle b'kama mishum b'kodem loy liknei toisefes. And if you want the first one, then keep the first one without the dekel. You may have an advantage in the first one. So therefore, you wanted to say Rav Nachman disagrees with Rav Huna, incorrect. Both cases, they're both, Rav Nachman would be moida. When you don't add on something, you're right, he'll be mevatel. But when you add on something, you're tesefes, then he would agree. And Rav Nachman, in fact, Rav Huna agreed. He added on something. And again, guys, remember, the 200, 300, there's something to advantage. It's a big advantage to the 200. The lien on all the properties sold in between the two. There's a big advantage. There's a very big advantage. Gufa. You just mentioned the din, right? Gufa. We mentioned it as a kasha. Now let's analyze it. Amar Rav Nachman. Shtei shtaros hayoytze b'zach hazeh. Bittul sheni esarishain. Amar Rav Papa. Umayder Rav Nachman di imayse badikle toisefes kasvei. Then you wrote it for the purpose of toisefes, and it's still a viable shtar. Pshita rishain b'mecher. Pashit. If the first field he sold this again, he sold field A as a mecher. V'sheni b'matana, and then he changed it and he gave him a shtar matana. Liyapos koyachu dekasvilei. He wants to go ahead and enhance his ownership. Mishum dina de bar mitzvah. Okay, guys, there's halacha basisa vayashav atoiv. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Here you are. I'll give you a bisman as an example. You live in a small house. The guy next to you lives in the same small house. For years, you envisioned what it would be like to own two houses and make them into a one-family house. Good. The guy sells his house. Wouldn't it be nice if he give you first dibs on the house rather than somebody else? In fact, there is such a halacha in the Torah. It's called dina de bar mitzvah, by a field. That if a guy goes to sell a field, provided you're giving him the same value, it's not, a person's not supposed to sacrifice money. Provided that you're giving him the same value, willing to pay the same price, there's a din of bar mitzvah. Bar means like bar mitzvah, you share the same mitzvah, you share the same border. So what happens over here is that there is a din of bar mitzvah by mecher. There's no din of bar mitzvah by a matana. There's no din of bar mitzvah by matana. So therefore, he wants to go ahead and enhance his, right? He enhances ownership over here, that people, the bar mitzvah, can't go ahead and come in ma'arer, that sell it to me. So therefore, that's miyapa koyach. The matana here, there's no din of matana by mitzvah, because again, there's no value there. You're not spending, the guy's not spending anything, he's getting it for free. So therefore, very geschmack. So therefore, obviously there, he wants the second shtar in mevatel the first shtar, because he wants to enhance what? He wants to enhance the din of mitzvah. But kol shkein mishum b'matana v'sheni b'mecha, darmina mishum dina de bal chayvu the cost of Cain. That what? That a bal chayv would come take it away from him. Guys, if I give you something as a matana, and somebody comes and takes it away from you, can you come back to me and say, where's my present? Of course not. If you buy a field for me, and someone comes back and take from you, obviously you come back to me. So therefore, if the first I gave it to you as a matana, and now I went ahead and made it a sale, so I'm enhancing your ownership. Why? Because if it's taken away from you, then what? Then you be able to come back to me. So both cases, you're miyapa, meaning the second shtar is enhancing your rights in the field. So therefore, the second shtar is being mevatel the first shtar. It's nullifying the first shtar. Says the Gemara, Ella ish shneim b'mecher, shneim b'matana, bittul sheni esarishain. If they're both right, matana, the first one is mevatel, the second one. So it's mevatel the date. My timer. Why? Rafa Mamar, Ema, you know why he's mevatel it? Because maybe the first star was a forgery, guys. Guys, I'm giving. What did I do? I sold you a field in September. I'm coming along, and now I give you another star. Why would I do that? If I didn't change anything. It didn't become a matana. It's still a mecher. It's still a star of a sale. So what did you gain? Why is a mecher mevatel it? Why is a matana? Why you mevatel it? Says Rafram, because the first star wasn't good. It was mezuyif. It was a counterfeit, and that's why he's giving you a second star, even though it's not accomplishing anything. No. He's being Michael the shibud of the time of the first one to the second one. That's what he's doing. My binayu, what's the difference? It could be nayu aruye sade. Again, the guys who are signed on the first star, if you're being mevatel it, if as a forgery, like Rav Rafram, you're placing questionable about the authority, the authenticity of these people, right? If it's al smechila, so it's a very good star. I'm just Michael the shibud in between. But if it's al swad, I don't trust you. It's not a good star. Then the Adam on that star would be questionable. That's one afkamina. Ushlume peri, according to the first one that it's mezuyif, you'd have to pay back. The loikeach would have to pay back any paris in between because it wasn't a good sale. Like the chuliach b'shibud, he wouldn't have to pay back. Well, the taska, and finally the land tax. Who would pay the land tax? Like Rafram, since it wasn't your field, the moicha would have to pay the land tax. According to Rav Acha, the loikeach would have to pay the land tax. Bottom line is my havila, guys. What's the bottom line? We got into the sugya machloikis between Rav Huna and Rav Asi. Who do we go after? You go after Shas Erisin, Shas Nesuin. Rav Huna said the Ksuba goes after Erisin, Ksiva, and the Taisefis goes after Nesuin. Rav Asi said both go after Nesuin. What's the halacha? My havila. What's the bottom line? The Ksuba Tashmadam Rav Huna Mashmuel Yishum Rav Lazar Rav Shimon Mona Messiah Mina Erisin, but Taisefis Mina Nesuin. In other words, Shmuel paskins in the name of Rav Lazar Rav Shimon like Rav Huna. Whether it's the Ikka Ksuba or the Taisefis Ksuba, Minhan Nesuin, you go after Nesuin. The Hilchasa, the halacha is like the majority, Echadzev, Min Nesuin, the halacha is like Rav Asi, and not like Rav Huna. Yishmak Gemara. Okay, until now we've been dealing with a violation, an onus. We've been dealing with Mefate, Pitoy. Tonight we're going to start a new sugya, the sugya of Maitzi Shemra. Okay, now the beginning of the parsha, I didn't put down here because we're not. Because it was on a separate piece of paper, and you know me, getting one piece of paper is hard enough. Getting two is already a nest. Ain't some come out of the nest. So, the beginning of the parsha of Mitzvah Shemer says the following. Now let's go back to the beginning of Masechta. Why is the girls get married on Wednesday? If they have Tainus Basulim, right, or Tainus Saddam with Pesach Basuah, they come on Thursday. So here, the guy is showing up on Thursday, and here's what he says. It says, he doesn't like her. The some loy alilas devarim, he comes up with a plan. I took her as a wife. I lived with her. I didn't find basulim. They take out the girl, they take out Simon, and he hates her. Now, guys, what he wanted to do by marrying her and saying this, he wants to beat the Ksuba. He made up a rumor. I didn't find by your daughter Basulim. And here's Raya, proof that my girl is Basula. The Simla, they show ostensibly they showed the blood of this girl. What do they do? Important. So they go ahead, and they give him Malchus. They give him Malchus. This is one of the places in the Torah that Loiku Mishalim. We learned that we El and Iris guys call a Mishalim and a Laika. We call a Laika and a Mishalim. Over here, you're going to pay and you get Malchus. Not only are you going to pay, you're going to pay double. You're going to pay kafel over 50, guys. You're going to pay kafel over 50. You're going to pay double. But Nasula Avia Naira, it's a Ramban. You pay, it's like double the 50. You pay 100. It's a kafel. But Nasula Avia Naira, and you give the money to the Avia Naira, which is really funny because l'chayra, she should collect the ksuba. Ki haitzi shemra al besulas Yisrael, because you were mighty shemra on her. V'loisi al isha, so mighty shemra pays 100. V'loisi al isha, similar to anusa, you get married to her. You have no choice. As Peter has a choice here, you have no choice. Lo yuchel shachal kol yamav, you can't send them away. Okay, that's if they lied. That's if they lied. V'emeres hayadava hazeh lo nimtzu besulam naira. V'hoitzi es hanaira el mipesach beisavia. You take the naira from Bezdin, you take her to the Pesach of her father's house. Usaklua anshe ira be'avonim v'mesa. And you stone her, the men of the city, with stones, and she dies. V'mesa is an extra word. It doesn't have to say that, obviously. So it's interesting. Usually, a woman, ki matzi ish sheicha v'nisha bulas bal, if a man lives with an Ashes ish, umesu gam shnei am isha shoch v'isha ubitar mekamecha, they get chenek, guys. This is the pasuk of adultery. Plain adultery is chenek. Naira hamurasa, a naira that's an arusa, and she had relations during this period. She gets skila, which is the most severe of all the mitzvahs bezdin, according to most poskim. Ki asason nevala be Yisrael. She did nevala in Yisrael. Liznoi space avia to turn aside her father's house. Ubiata ramikebecha. So what do we see? There's a Meya Kesef, not true. If it's true, she gets skila. And where does she get skila? Right from the Pesach Beis Avia, right from there. And if it's not true, there's $100 to pay. Okay, that's the din over here. That's the din over here. Let's put this down. Now, the Mishnah is going to tell us this din is only by a full-fledged Jewess. Someone who was a partial Jew, her conception was not as a Jew. She was Megayer after pregnancy, or even after birth, but the conception is a different halacha. Hagiyoris shenis gaira bita ima, a giyoris and her daughter's Megayer with her, vizinsa, and she's mizana when she gets married. Harizeb zubechenek, she's no different than any other adulteress, guys. That's the pasuk of Beis. It's not the parsha of Naira Murasa. That does not apply to her. She's not considered, she doesn't fulfill all the boxes because it doesn't say Yisrael by her. Zubechenek, even if she's Megayer before she was 3 and she's a Basula, right? It's since the pasuk says, be Yisrael, ki asa nevala be Yisrael, guys, right? That was the Lashon. The Lashon was what? Ki asa nevala be Yisrael. She did a nevala be Yisrael. Since she did a nevala be Yisrael, then what? Then I'm sorry. Since she did a nevala be Yisrael, but she is not considered Yisrael, and therefore she would not be subject to skila. Ein lo like Pesach Beis Av, nor with the halacha of bringing her to the father's house, as we saw, nor v'loy meyasela, nor the 100 if it's not true. So basically, the parsha of Amaitzi Shemra, which we just went through, does not apply to a giyaris. Haisa hayrasa shaloi b'kedusha. If the hayrasa was without kedusha, meaning she was conceived before the mother was megayer. However, v'leidasa b'kedusha, but her birth was after the mother was megayer. Then harizu b'skila. Then she would get skila. However, ve'ein lo pesach beisa'av lo meyasela. She's a hybrid now. She would get that din of skila, but she would not be what? She would not have pesach beisa'av. It's very good. Shmaka taisus rid, guys. Why is your son your son? Without DNA testing, why is your son your son? So he said, Roiv bilas, basar, habal. Most of the bias goes after the father. By a guy, you don't say that. So the reason says the Taisus read there's no Pesach Beisavia because you're not sure who the father is. You're not sure who the father is. We don't say Roiv Bilis by a Goyato. We don't say Roiv Bilis. You're subject to go ahead and be adulterous. So since you don't say Roiv Bilis, the Ken Zayin, that this is not a father. So even the father does have a house, there's no din of, and even when she's getting skila, there's no din of doing it by this house. Fascinating places of it. Next. The woman was Megayer. The conception was when she was a Jewess, and the birth when she was a Jewish. She's like a full-fledged Jew. Okay, and therefore all would apply. Everything would apply, right? There would be the Meya Kesef, there'd be Pesach Aviyah, and there'd be the Skila. Now, Yesh La'av Ve'en LePesach, a regular Jew, not a Gioris. Yesh La'av Ve'en LePesach, bias, Ha'av, Pesach Pesach, Yesh LePesach Pesach, Ve'en La'av, Harizu B'Skila, but never Pesach Pesach, El Mitzvah. In other words, you might think since you can't fulfill Pesach Pesach, you don't give a Skila, because again, where are you giving a Skila, guys? By the opening of the house. So you might think, it's really fascinating because we're going to see a Gemara in Sanhedrin, there was a Beis HaSkila, there was a place that they would perform skila. Here you're performing skila by the house, by the Pesach Pesavia. It's fascinating. So let's say the father doesn't have a house, it's not akiv. You could still have the parsha. Let's say she's a Yisraima, parsha not akiv. Okay. Amid days. Minoni Mili. You said that if she was conceived when she was a Gayata, but was born Bikdusha, how do you know it's skila? In other words, we said, what was the first case, guys? The conception was Shalai Bikdusha, and the Hayrasa was Shalai Bikdusha, and then she was Megayer, she's not considered, she gets Chenek. Why over here, why is it enough that even though the Leda was Bikdusha, since the Hayrasa was Shalai Bikdusha, maybe she should get Skila. Minani Mili, how do you know that only half of the equation was fulfilled? How do you know you get Skila? Minani Mili in that case. So Amar Reish Lakish Amakra Umesa. Again, the pasuk said Umesa. I pointed out when I read it. What does the pasuk say? What the word V'mesa is taught? Just stoner. Stoner. You know, it doesn't have to say V'mesa. The word Umesa comes to include what? Who gets skila? Who gets skila? Someone whose conception was Shalai B'Kedusha, but who was born B'Kedusha. Fred Gemara. So if you're telling me that's true, that she's a Jew, le'inyan what? Le'inyan skila, milki nami nilki, umeya sela nami l'shalim. So let the one who is Moitzi Shem on her, let him get the Yisroi Soy, let him get the Malchus, and let him pay the 100. Why are you limiting it? You're saying that only linyan that. Says Omakra Umesa, meaning Lemisa Nisrabasa V'loy Leknas. Only linyan Misa was included V'loy Leknas. Only linyan Misa, but not Knas. Fred Gemara of Emel Rabbis Hayrasa V'leidasa B'Kedusha. Why do you go ahead and say the hybrid that the conception was as a Shalai B'Kedusha and the birth was B'Kedusha? Maybe it's the Mimarba where the conception and the birth will be Kedusha. Maybe that. Only there you get Skila. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, then Hahi Yisraelis Mal Yisrael. You don't need a pasuk for that. If she's Megayer and the conception takes place after the Geras and the birth takes place after the Geras, I need a pasuk to tell me you get Skila. In Yiddish we say Zi is a Yid. She's a Yid. So you don't need a pasuk for that. Let's say to include in other words, that she at all. In other words, when she's Megayer, and then she be Beskila. So then it can't be Yisrael Mayahani Lem. It says Asan Nevola be Yisrael. What does that help me for? So therefore, obviously, that's the case. Good. Amrav Yossi Bar Chanina. Hamoitzi Shemra ala Yisaynim Potter. If someone's Moitzi Shemra ala Yisaynim, the Potter Shnemu says V'naslu la'avi hanaira prat lezu shein layav. Right. So in other words, she would get killed. She would get chenek. But what does Potter mean? Is Potter from Skila or Potter from the Knas? What is I just said? When it says pata, the pata from skila or the kanas? A second. From the kanas. Kanas. The pata from kanas. In other words, because it says, V'nasu lavi anayra prat l'zu shein lavi anayra, you wouldn't have to pay the 100. Must have Rabbi Yosef bar Rav and Vitem Rabbi Yosef bar Zvida, then moyin aviyah. Right? It says by the Pasha Samafata, and the father refuses to give her over in marriage, l'Rabbi Yisayim l'kanas, the Rabbi Yosef Lili. So what's the difference between Mitzvah Shemra and the Yisayim? The Rabbi Yisayim l'kanas. So why by Pitui does he Yisayim does he pay kanas, and why by Mitzvah Shemra does he not pay kanas? So who Ma'aseh Mufarik Lo, the Bo'alev Yakach this Yasma. That case is where he lived with her and then she became a Yisayma. If she was a Yisayma, then there'd be part by Pitui as well. The only Chiyah of Pitui is when he's Mafataha and then she became a Yisayma. So the Chiyah was there already because the father was alive, b'shas the seduction. Rava Amar, Rava says Chayev. Rava says you be Chayev, you be Chayev. Nemai, Midetani Ami, Besulas Yisrael, V'loi Besulas Gerim. Because Ami, name of a person, Besulas Yisrael, V'loi Besulas Gerim. Besulas Yisrael, not Besulas Gerim, and she's like a Yisayma. In the case of a Yisrael, similar to a Ger. Guys, what's the din of a Ger? Ger is Gaya, correct? So for all intents and purposes, a Ger is a Yisayma. So what does it say over here? It says that Besulas Yisrael, below Besulas Gerim. So in other words, you need the Yisrael, the Besulas Yisrael, similar to Besulas Gerim. So just like the Besulas Gerim is a Yisayma and you pater, so too by the Yisrael, where Yechayev, it must be a Jewess who's similar to the Geiris, which is what? She's a Yisayma. So since she's a Yisayma, Rava disagrees and says there would be a Chayev of Kanas. Since by Yisrael Yisayim Yechayev, you need a pasuk by Gerim to tell me your pata. You can tell me that the Yisrael Yisayim is pata. Hashter Yisrael pata the Gerim ni boy, and the Geir certainly is a Yisayim. She has no father. Amish Lakis Hamoitzi Shema ala Katana pater. Someone's Moitzi Shema he marries a Katana says I didn't find Basulim is pater, and doesn't prove to be true. It's pater from the Knas. Shenemar, when nasnu la'avia naira, it says give the avia naira. Naira is a hay. We had this come out earlier, guys. Naira mole. The naira is written mole, right? Dibra kosim. It's speaking about a full-fledged naira, not a katana. So the parsha of naira murasa is only by naira. Maskalor acha baraba taimed naira. Lav hochi. If it didn't read hanaira, hav amina, I would have thought afilu katana. How could you think that a katana you go ahead and have to pay? If it was true that she was mizana, then loynimsu besulim naira, then right siras and naira el pesach besavia v'seklua. Katana la basoinshim he. Katana is not a baroinshin. So why do you need the word naira to teach me a naira not a katana? By the fact that if it's true you're killing her, it must be not a katana. So I don't need the word naira for that. So here's what I need it for, and this is what we had earlier. Over here, it's naira, but any place that says nar, with chaser, it's mashma filu katana. So it's a very geschmack of meshachachma over here that I'll share with you. Okay, he makes the following diak. He makes the following diak. The Meshech Chachma was noted for synthesizing the Torah Shebechsav and the Torah Sheval Peh. He was able to put it together in such an unbelievable way. So what does it say? The parsha? Ki yikach yishisho bo leha usneya v'sam law alilas devarim. V'sam law he places on her alilas devarim. V'hoitzi alaha shemra. Then it says. The lokach avi anaira the ima b'hoitzias p'slei anaira ziknei ha'ir v'ama avi anaira zikanim esbitin asayt l'ishazel leisha v'yisneaha v'ininu some alilas devarim. Now it doesn't say in the second time some law alilas devarim. It just says the word some. So Rabbi Simcha is going on that. V'inei some alilas devarim. That's the pasuk. Like Kosev v'hine hu some law, kimay b'reisha Kosev. The beginning of the parsha it said some law. At the end of the parsha it says what? Some. L'fi pshat the habal seinea v'roitzela hifter mimenu b'lei mayar. What the Baal hates her, he wants to get out. He doesn't want to pay the ksuba. If this guy just wanted to not marry the girl, he didn't have to go through all this whole charade saying if I'm basulim. He wants to tie the mekach tois. He wants to save himself a few bucks. So he's willing to do that to be mitzi laz on a bas Yisrael. L'chein mitzi shemra aleha. Therefore, he's mitzi shemra on her. Kimosha amru. Rabbi Shmuel Leimer Borei Masnei Garemes. Okay, let's lashon hara musabar. Over Adam al v'hafkel riyacha k'moicha. Seifel aver al leisikam leisitar. You'll be over on taking revenge. Ve'al leisisna sachicha v'chayachicha imach. Avalavia toiveya mashenegez loy. The father is toiveya mashenegez him. Shu hoitzi alav shemra. Not only was he mighty shemra on the girl, who mighty shemra alav on the father. Shehu yimsa bitoy liznus. Which type of girl would go ahead and be mizana? You're talking about a girl who's 12 and a day, between 12 and a day and 12 and 6 months. What kind of chinuch did she have in the house? So not only is he being some law, but the some alilas devarim. He, the father, saying some alilas devarim because that some is going on the father. It's not going on the girl. The first part is some law going on the girl. The second part is going on me. You are going ahead and questioning me as a parent. I raised such a daughter. Some alilas devarim, not some law. Lemar lemetzasi lebitcha besulim sheyomer al biti umashe gedalti. I saw that I raised her. Shehi zinsa achrei. Shemari I see bechinuch toiv, right? I taught her in a good way, and now you're telling me that what? I wasn't a good parent. Who cherpoli? It's an embarrassment to me. Who ki'ilu some alay alilas devarim, and it's like you might see laz on me. Guys, listen to this. What's the halacha, fellas? The halacha is kol ha'loika ein mishalem, right? This guy is going ahead v'yisro say, correct? He's getting malchus. Why is he paying? L'chein yishalem avur habizoyin shel aviyah, meya kesef leaviyah. He's getting the money. Why? Because it's his bizoyin. V'loika al masher ratza laharga, and he's getting malchus that he wanted to kill her. L'chein ein zeh rak k'moy malchus lezeh v'tashlumin lezeh. Guys, the din of loika mishalem is only in the same individual, the same person. But if you go ahead and Mechayiv Malchus on one person, if I go ahead and I hear a guy, whatever, and I go ahead and Achiyav Mammon and somebody else, you don't say the din Kol Mishalem and Kol Mishalem. You pay and you get Malchus. Over here, the payment's for the father and the Malchus is for the girl. The Mela Loika Umishalem. Ulafizeh b'Yisayma Pata Mimeya Kesef, and therefore by Yisayma Pata Kedas Ve'Shlakish B'Gemara, like we just saw. Aval Malchus Chayev Al Yisayma, you be Chayev. Why? Since there's no father, the Malchus and the Mishalim are on the same individual. Kol Alaika ain't a Mishalim. That's the reason why Yisayma does not go ahead and pay. That's why you don't have to. Isn't that Peladik Meshach Chachma? It's such a brilliant individual. He was such a brilliant, the way he synthesizes from one word. V'sam alilas, v'sam la, v'sam alilas. Mamish Gavaldig, right? Have a great Shabbos. On that note.